We're back with business news and social media news and Santa Margarita Pinot Grigio 2017. Another not aged very long, but crisp and refreshing. This week, our business news, I didn't even notice it until I was just laying out the stories. It is almost all about Apple. So, I don't know. If you don't like Apple, tune out. Don't really, though, because we need the watch time. We desperately need YouTube engagement. But the first story let's talk about is Threadripper. AMD has released the second wave of Threadripper CPUs, the 2920X and the 2970WX. So this is, they're trickling out the Threadripper releases, and these two just in time for the holiday season. Hot Hardware has some benchmarks for them. And basically, to put it in a nutshell, the 2920 seems like a really amazing value. It's not exactly a budget CPU, but compared to the rest of the field, it's certainly budget and performs really well, and actually does really well at single-threaded performance, which, is not something that Threadripper is necessarily known for. The 2970, it suffers a little bit when it comes to some of the limitations, especially if you're using Windows, because of, the way that it works in Windows. The Hot Hardware speculates that this will be fixed, and in fact, AMD is offering some optimization software for these CPUs already that you can sort of tweak it. But if you're one of these people who doesn't want to mess with the CPU and just wants to, turn it on and let it work, maybe not the greatest thing for you. But the 2970 in multi-threaded applications, things like like really multi-threaded things like ray tracing, it really shines when you consider the price point is way lower, as much as $1,000 lower than the Intel competitor. So if you're looking for a Threadripper build, you're on a bit of a budget, something you might want to look out for. Google. We talked yesterday about Google and the coalition of companies, of which Google was one of them, who, let's take a drink just for no reason, right? Who were decrying Trump's gender definition of two genders. They don't agree with it. They don't like it. And they're white knights in the gender war. But wait, Google's employees have staged a walkout over sexual harassment. But what? How could these paragons of gender and equality ever be judged by their employees? Well, if you watched last week's Level 1 news, you'll remember that I don't remember the guy's name, one of the guys who invented Android, or at least was very instrumental in the invention of Android, might have coerced a coworker into a hotel room BJ. Maybe a little bit against her will. Some other stuff, I read some other stuff about that, where he was apparently, he had sort of like slaves. They weren't really slaves. He was paying them hundreds of thousands of dollars because he's mega rich. But in exchange for hundreds of thousands of dollars, they acted as his slaves, which that's not legal, especially sex slaves. Sex slaves are not legal. I've looked into it. They're not at all. Under no circumstances is that legal. So let's take a solidarity drink with all the sex slaves out there. In response to this story, thousands of people, or in some cases dozens, it didn't catch on in some places, walked out of Google, and they're demanding a series of things. I believe there was a bullet point list of demands. Let me see if I can find it. Nope. Here we go. Oh, that is a small font. An end to forced arbitration. Okay, yeah, because if you get harassed at Google, then you go into arbitration at Google rather than like a lawsuit. Commitments and pay and opportunity and inequity. Publicly disclosed sexual harassment transparency report. Yes, they didn't tell anybody about this hotel room BJ for a long time until now. This happened in like 2015, 2013, something like that. Clear, uniform, globally inclusive process for reporting, blah, blah, blah. You can read it if you're interested in it. Anyway, they made some demands and no one cares. But they walked out. So now on to the mega block. Welcome to, let's take a drink for the Apple Mega News Block. Even though this drink is based on grapes. Weird, right? Apple has warned that holiday sales might not be as hot as some people would expect. Not good. The $1 trillion valuation that they famously surpassed, as well as Amazon, well, they've fallen below it. Apple is no longer a $1 trillion company. They'll bounce back, don't worry. But they launched the iPhone XS and whatever all the other iPhone models they launched this year a little bit early. And so they're saying, well, we might have acted too quickly. We might have been a bit premature in our ejaculation of the new iPhones. And so it's going to hurt holiday sales. It could be that people are just losing interest in the whole Apple deal. And they also, there's two stories that need to go together here, but I think I got them mixed up. Maybe I just didn't. In fact, I've closed the tab. I'm falling apart. Another thing that they announced, along with this bad news, is you know how they always tell us how many iPhones and iPads and Macs they sell, and we use those numbers to determine how well they're doing? They're not going to do that anymore. That's weird. Why would you stop doing that? Maybe because you're not selling as many as you used to? They say no. They say it's because it doesn't matter anymore because they're branching out, man, and they're doing like Apple Music and a variety of other things. And it's not all about the iPhone sales. Don't dwell on the iPhone sales, is what they're saying. I, for one, am going to dwell on the iPhone sales. I think that matters. Perhaps more disturbing than lower sales is some slavery. Well, maybe not slavery, but illegal student labor. That's a nicer way to put it, right? So it turns out that Apple might have had some interns working on the Apple Watch, I think. Yeah, the Apple Watch. And so here's the thing about interns. They're not supposed to be working in manufacturing. And they're not supposed to work overtime. But guess what? The accusation is that these interns were doing both of those things. They were working 12-hour days and 6-day weeks. That's not allowed. So someone's looking into that. And I bet you that Apple will pay a serious fine. Not really. They'll pay a small fine. Apple and Qualcomm do not get along. They never have. They probably never will. Let's take a drink for acrimony between Apple and Qualcomm. Should it ever come to an end, I suspect the apocalypse will shortly follow. But Qualcomm once again is speaking out. They're saying Apple is late on their alimony payments to the tune of $7 billion American dollars. That's a lot. I don't know how you understand money, but my understanding of money, $7 billion is a lot of dollars. You could buy a lot of popcorn with $7 billion. And that's how I measure amounts of money. It's like, how much popcorn could I get with that? And it's a lot. Well, holiday season's coming up. You're going to go and see your family. One of the things that you might do to celebrate Thanksgiving and Christmas or, whatever godless holidays you celebrate in your country, you might get some helium balloons and, do the funny voice thing. That's something, we like to finish the turkey dinner. We sit around in the living room and we pass around the helium balloon in my family. That's something we do. Be careful. of family members who have iPhones because Helium can disable them. A tragic thing that a hospital found out when they were installing an MRI machine and accidentally leaked helium all through the floor of the hospital. It turns out that it is in the iPhone fine print, and the Apple Watch, not just the iPhone, also the Apple Watch. These devices do not work in the presence of certain gases, helium being one of them. So the reason behind this is because Apple has eschewed the use of quartz timing. They are not using quartz to keep time. If you know anything about processors, timing critically important to a processor. You gotta know perfect timing if you're gonna do computing. And helium gets into an iPhone, it's over, Johnny. Can't keep time, freezes right up. So this guy was working in the hospital. He was an IT guy, and everybody was like, "Oh, my shit's not working." He did his own experiment, blasted some helium down into a Ziploc bag, put his iPhone in there, reproduced the results, and Apple confirms. Can't do it. Can't use your iPhone in a helium environment. I don't know what this means for the world, but it's not good. And that's not the only problem that Apple Watches have had this week. In fact, it's a small problem compared to a terrible update glitch. The Apple Watches have received an update that has locked them completely and left them sitting there with an Apple logo, completely non-functional. And if you're the kind of hardworking professional who uses your Apple Watch, you don't have the time or the patience for your Apple Watch to be down for even an hour. You know, you have productivity to do. You have emails to answer. You got to hop on a call. You got to have like 12 meetings. Because I guarantee you, if you're the kind of person who wears an Apple Watch, you are not one of the productive people in your company. You're hopping on calls. That's what you do. Let's take a hop on a call drink. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, I'm an Apple Watch person. I'll just go down to the Genius Bar because I love going to the Genius Bar. It's one of my favorite things to do. It makes me feel better than everybody else. Well, hold on there, cowboy. The Genius Bar can't help you. They're powerless. This glitch is so bad, you're looking at a two-week return time after you send your watch back to Apple. A colossal failure. Unacceptable. But that's what you get for being an Apple normie. And it's much, much less than you deserve. So think about that. Think long and hard about it. Here's maybe some good news. Maybe some capitulation on the behest of the giant fruit. Apple is going to launch vintage repair. Oh, vintage repair. What does that mean? Well, Apple has this policy. After 5 to 7 years, your device is considered vintage. What does that mean? It means they won't even think about fixing it. You take it to the Genius Bar, they will just literally throw it out the window and give you the finger. That's Apple policy. If you walk in there, so what they'll do, they'll be like, "Oh, let me take a look at this," and then one of the other Genius Bar people will sneak around behind you and get on their hands and knees, and then they'll push you so you fall over. And the classic gag. That's what they do if you bring in one of these old devices. No more. They're only doing this in the US and Turkey, I think, which is weird. But you can see here, iPhone 5, MacBook Air 11-inch and 13-inch, and the iMac. Oh, it's the iMac that's in Turkey only. I'm sorry. So worldwide, you can get the other ones. But that's the list of items that they will consider. It's vintage, but we'll fix it if we have the parts. If we don't have the parts, you will be embarrassed and sent packing because you're poor, and if you don't have the latest Apple product, you really aren't a person. If you think about it, you're less than human. That's the message. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reveal my failures here. Now, I could skip over this. You would never know. You'd never have any idea what I did, but I'm going to show you. I included 2 stories about no longer revealing how many it sells. Actually, I didn't. I forgot that I skipped ahead and actually talked about this. Let me tell you. Blame it on the grapes. Isn't that a popular song? Blame it on the alcohol. I think I've heard that on the radio. 2 million children are using smart speakers in the United Kingdom. 2 million children. It turns out that the Euro kids, or the UK kids, we can't lump them into the same category because they're Brexiting. But they love Alexas. And they want to be friends with the Alexas. And they want to talk to them. And they want them to play music. And they want to play games. And it's kind of disturbing because it's indoctrinating these poor children with these parents who should know better. They're going to grow up thinking that Alexa is their friend, when in fact, Alexa is a spy. 2 million. I don't know how many people live in that twisted little island, but 2 million is a non-trivial percentage. So, if you got kids, not even once with Alexa. Keep them away from her. She's a bad influence. Well, let's smoothly move into social media. All right? A lot of Facebook this week. The first story is about Facebook banning the Proud Boys and founder Gavin McInnes. So there was some kind of, I think it was a Trump rally. Well, you know, these Antifa people, they show up at all the rallies. Gavin McInnes, who is one of the co-founders of Vice, and you might be thinking to yourself, Vice? Vice is a hotbed of liberalism. That doesn't make any sense. Well, he's no longer affiliated. He has taken his massive amount of Vice money and he's gone off to do his own thing. He's a very right-wing kind of guy. And so he started this Proud Boys group, which it's sort of a tongue-in-cheek, like, okay, if you're going to vilify us for being white, then we're just going to embrace it. And so they showed up at the Trump rally where the Antifa people were, and they got in a fight. Facebook says that's, you know, hate-filled and stuff, and so they have begun to ban everything to do with Proud Boys. And eventually, Gavin McInnes himself has been banned from Facebook. It seems a little one-sided. Now, I don't know exactly what went down with the fighting. I'm sure there's plenty of videos about it because, you know, everybody's filming at these kinds of things. But I'm sure both sides had a hand in inciting violence there. And I don't see any headlines about Facebook banning Antifa and, you know, the other side of it. But who knows? Anyway, if you're a Proud Boy, you're not on Facebook. So, time to go elsewhere. Can't go to Gab, right? Let's take a quick aside. Let me just look at the time. We're at 18 minutes. Let's talk about Gab for a minute, right? Because, you know, why not? We're drinking. It's just you and me, you know? And I feel like we can have a frank conversation. We can tear down these partisan walls and we can talk about Gab for a minute. Because last week we did the Gab story. We had a couple of people comment that they were unsubscribing because we did not properly cover the Gab situation. Now, if you don't know about Gab, we'll do a quick refresh. The synagogue shooter was a big Gab user, and he had said some anti-Semitic things on Gab. As such, PayPal dropped Gab from payment processing. And they said that, you know, you're a den of hate speech, we don't want anything to do with you. So a lot of people took issue that that is the left being in charge of technology and using that, weaponizing that against the right. Oh, almost knocked over my wine. The story about the Proud Boys kind of, you know, echoes that, right? Because one side is being banned and the other isn't. But let me elaborate on why we did not cover Gab to that extent. So, or at least why I did, and I can't speak for Wendell and Krista. You know, they're wild cards. I'm not going to take responsibility for them. But to me, let's take a Let's take a frank conversation drink real quick. To me, we have had mass shootings. Well, mass shootings have always happened, right? It's not necessarily that they just started recently, but the coverage of them started recently. And the 24-hour coverage of them started recently. So when we have a school shooter or a hate crime shooter like this, or any kind of mass shooting, the problem, in my mind, is the coverage, right? They get their entire history, their past is looked into. If they have tweets, if they have manifestos, they are broadcast. Their past is looked into. And these people, who I believe are looking for attention, are catered to by the mainstream media. Everything that they believe in, all of their messages that they were not able to express to the world are suddenly front and center. And I believe that that's the problem. And that's the reason I don't want to talk about Gab that much. I don't want to talk about this guy that shot up the synagogue. We covered it because obviously it's news. But we didn't go into detail. We didn't talk about the things that people accused us of not talking about, because that's not what you should do. And imagine for a moment. So let's follow this crazy idea that the Jews are the root of all evil, and this guy was striking back against them because they're the one that are causing the payment processors to shut down. And all the people in the synagogue are somehow magical Jews that control that kind of thing. Even if that were true, do we want to set the precedent that mass shootings can cause political change? Do you kind of understand how that might affect you someday and your loved ones? If any idiot who thinks, I don't like the way things are, and I've seen it proven that the way that I can change things is just to go shoot random people, you see a problem there? You see why you don't want to talk about that person? Why you want to just ignore what they did and not give them the attention? If you believe that that's a good idea, I've got a great idea for you. All right? Here's an idea that's just as crazy. We got an election coming up here in the U.S. So MTV used to have this program called Rock the Vote, right? Rock and roll. Get out there and vote because the rock and roll people told you to. I've got an idea along the lines of the synagogue shooter. Let's Glock the vote, right? So what we're going to do is, they give you those little I voted stickers, you put them in a show. Oh, I voted. I did my civic duty. If you don't see one of those, just let them have it, man. Glock the vote. That's obviously hyperbole because it's as stupid as glorifying a mass shooting. And that's the end of that aside. Let's continue on and let's talk about Twitter. Twitter is going to remove the like button. You like a post on Twitter, someone posts something that you like, maybe some celebrity like Taylor Swift comes out and has a political view where she didn't before, and then somebody gives a scathing response, and you're like, ooh, I like that. I like that response. Well, Jack Dorsey is saying that's part of the toxicity of Twitter. We can't have that. Like button is lowering the quality of debate, and it must be done away with. So if you like the like button, bad news. Let's pay respects to the like button and its soon to come death with a drink. Rip like button. Oh, CNN Business. They've got a very pretty girl, and she's asking for my email. Do you think I should give it to her? Maybe later. Not right now. Oh, come on. There we go. Twitter took down thousands of accounts that discouraged voting in the midterms. Well, we got that vote coming up. Super Tuesday. If you're in the U.S. and you don't know, Tuesday's the big day. You go, you cast your vote, and you make a change in the world. Maybe you're part of the blue wave. Maybe you're part of the red wave. maybe you're a thinking individual who doesn't vote down the party lines. Either way, Tuesday's the day you're going to do it. And Twitter has discovered that certain accounts were discouraging people from voting. They don't like that, and they're all about banning people who discourage voting. It is definitely a thing. I don't know if it's a thing in the rest of the world, but in America, it's like you never tell someone not to vote. But even if they're morons, and you're like, whoa, they probably shouldn't vote. The official narrative is like, no, everybody has to vote, which is a weird thing. But, you know, what do I know? I'm not discouraging you from voting. Do whatever you want. I'd say do whatever you want, right? Don't shoot up a polling center. Aside from that, whatever you want. Another thing that Twitter's looking to let you do is report accounts that you suspect are bots. So you think this is an anti-voting bot? Well, now you're going to have some features that let you click and say, you think that's a spam bot? Or, you know, maybe it's some other kind of thing. But you get to choose, and you're going to report it. Now, they have not said specifically what they're going to do once you report those accounts. It might be like sometimes at a really busy intersection, the crosswalk, when you push the button, doesn't do anything. It's just, they only install the button because it makes you feel better because you're pushing it. It's on a timer. But you feel better pushing the button. So it might be like that, but who knows? Maybe they'll look at it. We'll never know. And now let's talk about Facebook. A couple of very embarrassing stories about Facebook. Man, there is no shortage of stock photos of Mark Zuckerberg looking like a moron. I mean, look at that. It's amazing. But Vice News posed as 100 senators to run ads on Facebook, and Facebook approved all of them. Now, they didn't actually post any ads, so it might have gotten caught when they actually created the ads. What they did is they got pre-approval for the ads because they got this new system where you have to get pre-approved, right? So if you're going to post an ad, you have to say, you know, like when you watch a political ad on television, and it'd be like, I'm Joe Jerkoff and I approve this message, you know, that kind of thing. So they have that kind of system in place. You have to confirm that you are from that campaign so that they can put that disclaimer on the ad. Well, what Vice did was like, let's just pretend to be all these senators. And without actually posting the ad and the pre-processing, Facebook didn't question them at all. It's like, oh, you're that senator? All right, we believe you. Go ahead. Here you go. Give us money. So that was kind of embarrassing. Now, Business Insider read this story and they said, oh, we should do that. But let's do it a little bit differently. Now, we're behind an ad blocker here. But what they did, they took it a step further. They pretended to be Cambridge Analytica. I guess what happened? The same thing. Facebook was like, oh, cool, Cambridge Analytica. Yeah, go ahead and post. Here's the problem. Cambridge Analytica is banned from Facebook because of that data leak thing. They're not supposed to post on Facebook at all. But they were approved. I should also mention in the previous story, 2 names didn't get through. Like all 100 senators did. 2 names didn't get through. Mark Zuckerberg, they caught that one, and Hillary Clinton. How hilarious is that? You can't pretend to be Hillary. Oh, who would want to? So yeah, Facebook's filtering thing is bullshit, basically, is what they're trying to tell you here. I wasn't going to include this story. Facebook shares whipsaw after mixed earning report. So basically, Facebook had a mixed bag with its earnings call, and the stock went down and then went right back up. So there's not much of a story here. But anyway, not as many people are using Facebook. We all know that. But they still have all those other companies which are doing very well. So they're doing fine. Facebook's doing fine. They talked about how they're going to do future stuff. They're going to continue to branch out. I think Facebook understands that Facebook itself is going to die a very slow death, and they're just going to keep buying new things with their giant pools of money. and trying to stay on top of, because they got the VR, they got the Instagram, they got the Snap and all that. I don't use any of that stuff, so I'm not hip to it. But So what about Facebook? When you advertise on Facebook, similar to the political stuff, you can tag interest groups. So I only want to be, and they got in trouble. For example, you could take housing ads and you could target them toward races. So it's like, listen, I got this apartment building. I would prefer the Hispanics not live there. How about that? And Facebook was like, totally cool. We can help you with that. They got a little trouble over that. Well, now, another embarrassing thing, you can target advertisers based on the interest of white genocide. Yeah, white genocide. Now, it turns out this is not people who are interested in wiping out the white race, as it is people who are afraid that the white race is going to be wiped out. For example, the Pittsburgh shooter. He was a believer that the evil Jews were going to wipe out the white race. Even though, visually, they are white people, which is interesting for the most part. But I don't understand where you draw the line there. But the point is, you could buy ads and you could target these people on Facebook, and The Intercept looked into that, and maybe a little embarrassing. Personally, as we've pointed out, straight white male here, I'm not too concerned about being wiped out by genocide. I think that's an overblown fear. Yeah. Wouldn't worry about that too much. Well, what was this story? Oh, yeah. The Pentagon. I didn't know what this was about because I need to scroll up. There's the entire story. The Pentagon is working on social media surveillance, which is weird because the Pentagon usually concerns itself with foreign war. But now they're looking at domestic. So it seems like they see these anti-Trump protests, right? And a violent anti-president protest in a nonpartisan way could be concerning. You think about the guy was elected. You can make all the arguments you want, but going against the protest. Now, they used the same argument with Bush, and I don't think I agree with it in either case. Both were poor choices, probably. Not that we had a better choice, but the point is, the Pentagon is worried that these violent anti-Trump protests are going to get worse and worse, and they need to do something about them. Let's take a quick drink, because we haven't. Just a tiny bit to get us through the next episode, which is good. But the concerning thing here is the Pentagon working on monitoring social media to try and control dissent among the populace. So whether you agree or disagree with Trump, here's the thing. Now, a lot of you hate Trump, obviously. He's a very divisive figure in the world. But even if you are the stereotypical never Trumper and you think he is the devil, here's the problem here. Or actually, I'm sorry, it should be the opposite. If you're wearing a MAGA hat right now, if you're that person, you should not celebrate this, because this is dangerous. You have to think about the other side will get power eventually. There will be a political backlash. Might not happen on the 6th. Might not get the blue wave then, but eventually there is going to be a Democratic president or liberal president. And they will then have control of this surveillance network that will then operate against you. So this is a very bad thing. This is a terrible thing that the Pentagon is using social media to track citizens, and to what degree or to what effect, I don't know, but I guarantee it's going to be nothing good. So be careful. Maybe don't use Facebook. Maybe don't use social media. I mean, I use Twitter, but honestly, I tweet like once a month, and I don't follow anybody. So what are they going to figure out about me? Probably a lot, actually. And if you do use Facebook, more bad news. 81,000 hacked Facebook accounts are for sale. So these people claim that they have actually got personal communications. This is not just your account information. This is your chat and messages and stuff like that. So they took a small portion of this and released it to prove that they had what they had. And various news organizations looked at it and they were like, well, yeah, this looks like they got what they think. They are trying to sell it, but the ad for trying to sell it has been taken down as part of the, anti-hacking effort against this thing. So they claim now Facebook has responded. Facebook says we have not been hacked. They probably it's 81,000 accounts. They probably got that from a browser plugin. So it wasn't us. It was somebody else. Who's to say? If you don't use Facebook, you don't have to worry. But Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, they're all the great evil. How do you avoid them, right? There's no alternative. You got to be hip and cool. How are you going to be hip and cool without using something under the Facebook umbrella? TikTok is the answer. TikTok has now surpassed all of them and YouTube in downloads in the last month. I guess that's October. Maybe no. Yeah, it had to be October, right? So TikTok is a Chinese upstart that does short videos and Twitter-like stuff, and it's exploding. It's exploding in popularity. I know, from time to time, people will send me links to Imager, and a lot of these are carrying. If you look at this little branding that's on all of these, and you're just like, oh, what is that? Well, it's TikTok. They're taking over the world. This is a Chinese company. Now, you probably should not assume that a Chinese company is not spying on you just as much as Facebook is. But hey, you hate Facebook, but you need those memes in your life. Maybe TikTok is for you. It's taking over the world. We're going to take one final drink for this episode, and that's going to wrap it up. Business and social media. Friday, we're taking a look at some robots and artificial intelligence, a little bit of science, and everybody's favorite nonsense. So tune in for that. And coming up next week, we'll be hopefully back to our regularly scheduled program. I do not think that Krista can generate yet another wedding. And Wendell hopefully will have weathered his horrible crisis and will be back with us at his usual jocular self. See you then, but stay tuned for Friday. I love you.